Excuse me. So the police are in the spotlight quite a lot at the moment. We're on April the 29th and we've just had the business about Hillsborough come out. So I thought I'd do some pieces on my experience of the police. And it would be very easy for it to turn into police bashing, okay? So let's start straight away by saying one very obvious and clear fact. The job of a police officer is an impossible job. And I can honestly say that without any shadow of a doubt. I've done some jobs that I consider difficult and maybe even impossible for me to do. But I'm not sure that we can look at a police officer's job as being anything but impossible. So all a police officer can do, as I said to a couple who I had in my house one time, all a police officer can do is you go out there, you do your best for the time that you've got that day, you come home, you drop it all and you go push weights or water ski or whatever it is you do, and you just play chess, anything, just get away from it because there's nothing else you can do. You put in your best and you come home, right? So it is an impossible job. It's not just difficult, it's impossible. 1 second we'll expect a police officer to give us directions to somewhere that we don't know because our sat nav doesn't work or whatever it is, and a copper happens to be there, or whatever it is, right? You'll expect them to be all reasonable and pointed and to have local knowledge. Next second, if there appears to be some bomb scare or something, you'll expect them to be able to take charge and be polite to you while excusing themselves while they go and sort out, a major terrorist operation. You will expect a huge spectrum of behaviour from police. And you'd probably like them to be handy with a gun as well, presumably. And, it's just, we ask a lot. It is an impossible job, so I want to start by saying that. Right, so this piece is called The Cop and the Carburrettor. I could call it The Cop and the Dirty Carburrettor, or could I call it The Dirty Cop and the Carburrettor? Anyway, I was going to buy a motorcycle, and this was the motorcycle I was going to buy. Hopefully you can see it there. That's it. It's called a Yamaha SRX 400. And I probably would never have bought this bike at all, except that in the photographs you see, there's no sense of scale. So some of the photographs I saw showed it in a field, and they were fantastic photographs. It turned out this was Yamaha's photography, yeah? So it's a beautiful looking bike, and there's big hay bale things, the modern hay bales that look like a kind of cylinder thing, yeah? And they'd roll for quite a distance if you let them. And there's those. So it's a beautiful late August day or whatever, and the sun's shining, and it's in England somewhere or something. And then there's a Yamaha SRX 400 sat up against something. Now it's identical to the SRX 600, except for the obvious, it has a smaller engine. It's not on the outside, it's just the internal bore. So the bike is exactly the same. It's got a single disc brake at the back, a small one, single disc brake at the front, you'll have to excuse me talking bikes a minute, and a single cylinder engine which they took from some kind of a trials bike. And it's got clip-on handlebars, which mean it's quite a kind of low forward stance. Pardon me. Now what I didn't know about this bike was it is really small. I honestly didn't realise this, or I would never have bought it. And like I say, there's no sense of scale in the photographs. Okay. So I go from where I was living at the time in Yorkshire, and I have to go to Norfolk, which is not miles away. I mean, yeah, it's a distance, but Anyway, I take a trailer, borrow a trailer from my brother, and I go to Norfolk to see this guy to buy a bike. And it's one of those things, you see it on eBay, you ask all the questions you want to ask about it, you're pretty sure it's okay, and then I always go and do the same thing. Some people will try and stop you from examining the item, and what I always say is the same thing. I am verifying that the description matches the bike, or that the bike matches the description. You can kind of take it any way you like, but I'm really going after the Sale of Goods Act, saying that I've got to make sure that that bike is that description, yeah, because I've been sold a description. So I say I'm verifying the bike is the description. The bike matches the description, okay? So it's kind of slightly the other way around to perhaps to what some people might treat it. So if anyone makes any trouble, you always say that. Okay. So I'm in this nice little house in the middle of the country. I had to drive around for a bit to find it. No sat-nav at the time. And got a long story short, we get to the point where I've had a shot on it and there's something slightly wrong with it. Now, I probably at that point, that's the warning bells ringing. So I'm on standby to leave this deal, right? It happens that a cop does turn up in this incidentally quite soon. So we're discussing the bike and I'm discussing this problem. He said, let's go inside, have a cup of tea, discussing, yeah, okay. He's quite a young guy. He's a very young guy, in fact. Maybe 18 or 19 or something. He might have been 20. Not very old at all. And so we're talking about the bike and what the problem might be. Now this guy's had it for about a year or 18 months or something. And I think it was his first real bike. That's another alarm bell because people quite often mess with their first real bike and can cause damage. So we're talking about it. He basically said it came down to a dirty carburettor. That's the reason why it wasn't going very well and cutting out at junctions when it's stopping and stuff. I was dubious about this. I've had dirty carburettors. Yeah, they can lead to very similar symptoms, but I wasn't convinced. Just couldn't sell myself it for whatever reason. Anyway, so I said, well, you know, that's relative. He said it was relatively straightforward to sort. The answer always is, you know, in other words, they will say it's relatively easy to fix and it doesn't cost any money for parts and it's not a big job. And therefore they won't knock much money off, if any, off the price. Or they'll say the price already incorporates some reduction. Okay. To which I always say the same thing, which is this. If it's that easy, you would have done it already. And as for the price incorporating that, it wasn't mentioned in the description that it would stall at junctions. Okay? So that's him. I've got him flat now, pegged out for that. Then he announced an extraordinary thing. He said, is that your car outside? You know, he'd seen me come up in it, right? So I said, yeah. And I'm immediately thinking, what is this? And he said, I noticed your tax is out. And I thought, that's interesting. Because we got to the negotiating point where I basically said I was knocking £100 off or I wasn't having it. And that was when he trotted out this thing about the car. He said, I am a something police officer. And I said, right. And he said, well, you know, your road tax has run out on your car. He said, I mean, I could make something of it. And I thought, I just said to him, oh, right, that's the way you're going to go. I said, right. And I looked at him, I said, are you sure you want to go that way? Well, he said, I'm not making it. No, he said I could make something of it. I said, let me get this right. If I buy this bike at the price, you're not going to make anything off the road tax. I said, but unfortunately, I don't know that. You could still make something of it after we've done the deal. I said, tell you what, we'll forget all about this part of the conversation. And you'll either sell it to me at the price I'm offering or you won't sell it to me. I said, that's fair. And I won't tell your superintendent or whatever that you've been trying to use your uniform to get more money out of some member of the public who's come perfectly innocently to buy something you've advertised. How about that? And you could see him mentally. Look, this is one of these young guys that thinks he's a lot smarter than he is. My personal guess, I've seen it before and I've seen it a lot of times since. This is what happens when a father coaches his son and then his son runs out of coaching midway through a discussion, okay? So he's been coached to this point. And obviously this wasn't meant to happen. I was meant to give in. Okay. So he said, give me a minute. He disappeared out of the room. I now think years on that his old man was a retired police officer or something like that. And I'd seen his old man in the garden. And I thought to myself, right, it's like he's going for advice somewhere. I thought, God, this is so not going well. And I was really 50-50. You know, the bike was a lot smaller than I expected it to be. I should have used that moment to extract myself and just said, look, I'm not messing about. You contact your boss if you want. do what you like. He came back and he tried to press it a little bit further. I said to him, look, you're in a bad position, I said, because I will bring it up with your boss about how you've tried to use your uniform to leverage the price up. And bear in mind that this car is only 2 weeks out of road tax. We're in the middle of the month. That means I can buy the road tax as soon as I get back home. And I haven't skipped a beat. So you can technically say it's out of road tax, but all you could do is warn me and I'd go and buy the road tax immediately and I'm covered. Now, if it was into the next month, I would have missed a month and you'd have me. I said, I literally genuinely forgot. So I apologise for that, I said, but you're not going to railroad me by blackmailing me. I said, if I were you, I'd forget all about that. Because that's such a dangerous thing for you to do. In the end, I bought it, and I shouldn't have done. It wasn't the carburettor. It was a problem that everybody knows happens with aluminium cylinder heads. It can happen with steel cylinder heads, but we don't get many steel cylinder heads now. Basically, screwed a spark plug in wrongly and cross-threaded it. And because it hadn't gone in properly, it was leaking around the edges of the spark plug, so it never compressed properly and got proper ignition. So that's why it's continually running a bit, then not running properly. And in the end, all I could do was, I got as close to it as I could, I wrenched it out, I saw it, the spark plug threads were ruined. I thought, this is some dirty carburettor, this dirty cop sold me, yeah? And that was what he said, so total bullshit in the end. I had to get the best quality spark plug, called Iridium. They last for years, literally you don't have to touch them. So I paid 4 times the normal price for a spark plug, or 5 times the normal price for a spark plug. Filed it down in a special way, tightened it right up, and used it like a kind of tap. Anyone that's used taps and dies to make threads will know exactly what I mean. I squared it off in effect and made it taper and screwed it tight. Made a gas type seal work perfectly, but you could never touch that without fixing that in future. You would never be able to take that out without actually taking the cylinder head off and putting a proper helicoil fix in it or something. And that was the cop. And that young guy, what's surprising is not so much that he tried it on, but that somebody obviously advised him that would be a way to go. My guess is that while he was in the house, because he'd told me he'd noticed the car was out of tax. My guess is that while he was in the house, his old man had a look round my car. And then his old man went and advised him. So this is advice for anybody who's got a father and son thing going on. You got to be careful coaching your kid. You end up taking them halfway down a very rocky road. Now that we look at things like HILLSBOROUGH, can you imagine a cop doing something even as small as that now, and keeping his job? I stand by what I said at the beginning. Cops have an impossible job, but you do stuff like that using your uniform to leverage a price up of some item you're selling on eBay, and you just turn your uniform to a piece of shit. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Thanks for watching and listening.